Take the
Welcome,
hiccup.
everybody. My name's Karen Pontius. I run the Club Lunch Zooms. We used to meet in person for lunch before the pandemic, and then after the pandemic, we started looking at places to have lunch in person again, and it's a little bit too much. So we're loving the fact that it's free and the Zoom can reach people everywhere they are, and we can still be eating lunch while we watch this. So that's why we're here on Zoom. Thanks for attending the Democrats Club Lunch. The goal of the club is to bring together Democrats from the most conservative to the most progressive to celebrate our shared values, appreciate who we are, and to work together to put more Democrats in office. I'd like to acknowledge our Club Luncheon sponsor, Albrechta and Albrechta Law Firm here in Durango. They've been supporting our lunch for several years. And if you need legal help, please think about Albrechta and Albrechta. Our speakers today are the candidates for Colorado Senate District 6 and House District 59. And to clarify, if our current representative for House District 59, Barbara McLaughlin, is term limited and can't run again. So that's just to make sure you know Katie isn't running against Barbara. Let's see, she's still working for us until January, though. I thought after assembly, her job was over, but they have a lot of work to do. And Cleve knows about that. So I would like everybody to unmute for a minute so we can applaud Barbara for her 8 years of dedicated service to this district. Thank you, Barbara McLaughlin.
Thanks, Barbara. Well, thank you.
It's tough. We all really appreciate the hard work. So everybody's asked to stay muted except for the speakers, myself, and Gwyn Unger, who's going to help with questions. If you want to submit a question, put it in the chat and we'll get it to it. After the presentations of each candidate, we'll get to a Q&A, and then we'll, oh, Mary Dodd writes, we also want to thank Senator Simpson for his work. Exactly. I'm sorry I left that out, but you aren't leaving yet. So I guess that's what I was thinking. Who knows?
That's fine.
If you want to submit a question, use the chat feature on Zoom. It's on the bottom. Just scroll over the very bottom of your screen and see chat, and you'll be able to put questions in. Please don't unmute yourself and speak. Gwyn and I will take turns reading those questions to the candidates. And when we get to the Q&A, they'll have 90 seconds to answer each question. And I have a timer on my phone. So make sure you're sending your questions to everyone in the chat window. Let's see, if you're having trouble with internet connectivity, you may want to disable your video. I see most people don't have video on. So if you run into trouble, just disable your video and it should be much better. It works on slower connections. This Zoom meeting is being recorded and will be available within a day or two for viewing on our YouTube channel. So put La Plata Democrats in the YouTube search bar, and I'll put the link in there later. You can choose speaker mode right now, which will bring up a larger video of the person speaking. It's the 3 dots in the upper right where it says view. Well, that's 9 dots. You can choose gallery if you want to keep it the way it is. I would like to encourage everyone to donate to the La Plata County Dems in this important election year. Keeps our office rented and we can accumulate funds ahead of the need. Monthly donations are particularly appreciated, and I'll put the link in there. This is our 6th club lunch for this year. We're working hard to bring some great programs for you in the future. If you have any announcements to make, you can put that in the chat window as well, and I'll recognize announcements at the end of the program. So we're splitting this into 2 halves. We have an hour and a half, and we're giving 45 minutes to Senate District 6 at the beginning. And then the second 45 minutes will be House District 59. So each candidate will have 5 to 7 minutes of opening remarks. You can use less than that if you want, and then we'll move to the Q&A after both of you have spoken. and then you have 90 seconds to answer each question. So we'll hear from candidates for Colorado Senate District 6 first. Democrat Vivian Smotherman is a farmer and a veteran who spent over 20 years working in oil and gas field. Her top 3 priorities are affordable housing, school funding and safety, and rural health care. Republican Cleve Simpson is the incumbent senator. He's the general manager of the Rio Grande Water Conservation District and also served on the Adams State University Board of Trustees from 2015 to 2020. A native of San Luis Valley, he is a 4th-generation farmer and rancher there. He graduated from the Colorado School of Mines in 1984. So I'm going to flip a virtual coin to see who goes first. This is a thing on your phone. Cleve, I'm going to give you heads, and Vivian, you'll be tails, and I just hit flip. And it goes heads. Okay. That works.
That was neat.
Senator Cleve Simpson.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I've never seen the virtual coin toss before. That was pretty interesting. So
I wasn't going to get a coin and do it because you can't trust me on the coin flip.
First off, thanks for the invitation, Karen, and thank you to Vivian. We spoke a little bit at the League of Women Voters about I have a great respect for anybody willing to step up and try to serve in this capacity. So I'm actually calling you. Sorry, I'm in my vehicle. I'm sitting at the subway in Ignacio with my colleague and friend, Senator Chris Hansen from Denver. We have a group of 15 students from across the state, college students, science and engineering folks that are part of a fellowship to understand what policy making looks like at the Capitol. So Senator Hansen and I have done this a couple of years, and we're going to go spend the afternoon with the Southern Ute tribe. So anyway, that's why I'm in my car. I thought, Karen, you touched on most of the significant points in my history. Born and raised in Alamosa, School of Mines. Spent my professional career in the coal mining business in Colorado or in Texas, and finished my career in Australia. I'm fortunate to be back home in Alamosa. My wife and I been married 41 years now, and she's from Alamosa. We went to high school together and have a son and a couple of grandkids, and feel very blessed. When I'm not at the Water District or at the Capitol or campaigning anymore, I'm get to work with my dad, my 81-year-old dad, and my son and my grandson on the farm and ranch south of Alamosa. So was really interested in serving rural parts of the state when I got elected. It was kind of a unique circumstance. Got elected in 2020 to Senate District 35, which was 16 counties, the San Luis Valley, and everything east to Kansas. And then in the middle of my first term, redistricting happened that created the move and restructured and created Senate District 6 that now are 14 counties, the San Luis Valley and everything west to Utah and up to Montrose. So still, largely about rural Colorado, still the challenges of access to healthcare and water issues are still pretty prevalent and ag issues. So interested in, my only motivation is try to improve the lives and livelihood of the folks in both Senate District 6 and the state of Colorado. So I'll try to leave more time for questions, Karen, and keep it short. And that's my introduction. Again, thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Great. All right, let's hear an opening statement from Vivian Smotherman.
Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Senator Simpson, for joining us out here today. Appreciate seeing you. As she said at the beginning, I'm Vivian Smotherman. I have over 20 years in the oil and gas industry offshore. At the same time I was doing that, I had 15 years as a hog farmer, which was quite an experience if you've ever done that. At the same time, we were running a nonprofit to help farmers, especially young farmers that would come out to the community and try to get started, because that is probably the hardest thing in the world, because everybody that does farm knows that it's not a sustainable business unless you're doing other things on top of it. And that was the biggest thing we were trying to teach people, is that don't come out to the country and think that you can just put some seeds in the ground and you're going to be independent forever. So if you've done that, you know where I'm coming from. I'm in this race, I think pretty much the same reason Cleve outlined, is that we came back to Colorado 3-4 years ago, moved down to Durango, absolutely love it here. The climate's wonderful. The mountains are the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And the people are amazing. The people here have just been warm and welcoming and supportive. We've had an incredible time. And yet at the same time, we can look around and we can see the hardships people are dealing with. And we've, experiencing some of these same issues ourselves, but with rural healthcare and the issues with getting enough services, getting the right services, getting providers in our area, and making sure we have access to them, and that the insurance companies that we're paying premiums to are supporting us and letting us get the services we need in the places we live. So yeah, rural healthcare is really important to me. As I've traveled around and talked to people in the district, it's a huge issue throughout the district. We have a lot of counties that have no healthcare or no pharmaceuticals. They just have to travel a long way. And I know from myself and my wife, when one of us is sick or needs help, I don't want to have to drive 2 hours to get care. So I'm looking at rural healthcare and finding ways that we can incentivize moving people back into this district, moving healthcare professionals and doctors into the districts, and getting them stable lives that they can enjoy, they can afford, that'll make them want to stay here and keep serving this community. So as she said, healthcare is one of the issues. Housing obviously is a nationwide issue. It's particularly acute here in Colorado. I think the report last week said that even if we had stopped all immigration to Colorado, right now, Denver itself would still be 70,000 units below what it needs to have just to house the people that are there now. Our situation out here in District 6 is no different. We have some unique issues, though, that we also have to tackle, and that is we're stuck between these rather poor towns that are supporting and surrounding the rich tourist towns. And we need to do more to make sure that those come together and we can provide for all of those people in all of those districts. So again, watching people like Marsha Porter Norton and Matt Selka and the things that they've done, looking at the other programs around the state, like the 3D printed houses they're doing in Greeley, gives you a lot of hope that there are solutions to this housing problem and that we can make progress and we can make sure that everybody who wants to live out here can move out here and afford to live out here and has the services they need. And finally, education is incredibly important to me. My wife's a teacher. I've been a substitute teacher and a community college teacher. And for myself, education is so important because I just graduated from Fort Lewis College a month ago with degrees in history and anthropology, which I'm very proud of. It took me 37 years to get those degrees, but I'm quite happy about them now. Unfortunately, I'm not into doing historian work right now. I'm running a campaign, which is not what I expected to be doing. But education is incredibly important because we need to raise our children to be thinkers and not just doers. My concern with education is not only the funding, which obviously Colorado needs to step up and do a lot more for that, but just when I went to school, the focus was on learning. My parents still drilled into me that it was the learning, the education that was important. And that if you had that foundation, you could go out and do anything in your life you wanted to. Our schools today do not seem to have that same focus. They seem to be pushing kids directly towards career paths. Like that earning a paycheck and getting a job is the most important thing that they'll ever do. And I would like to see us change that focus back to just educating these kids so that they can make better decisions throughout their life in everything they do. And I think that's going to make them happier. It's going to make our schools safer because our children are going to have self-esteem again. They're going to have self-confidence again, things that we have lost a lot because we're forcing them into STEM courses and AP courses that are really hurting their egos and their self-confidence. So with that, I'm going to leave it to Karen because like Cleve, I don't want to take up all our time. Let's get into some questions.
All righty. They're starting to show up in the chat. The first one is about agriculture and water, which I know you both care about. And Clee's been working on all sorts of projects. Agriculture is a cornerstone of the economy, and water resources here are crucial for its sustainability. What policies do you propose to ensure the efficient use and fair distribution of water to support farmers and ranchers while also protecting our resources for future generations? So I'm not going to do the coin toss. Let's just, I'm going to alternate. So Cleve, you go ahead and answer that, and then we'll go to Vivian, and then the next question we'll do the other way.
Great. Thanks, Karen. And boy, there's a whole, we could spend an hour or more just talking about water resources and the impacts across the state. And that's largely what, originally motivated me to run for office. Was I served on the Interbasin Compact Committee and could see the statewide issues from 2015 through 2020, and worried about what was going to happen to rural Colorado as our water security issues just continue to escalate, where demand, particularly demand on the Front Range, continues to exceed supply. And the easy avenue, the preferred avenue, a lot of times for developers is just to come to rural Colorado, buy ag water rights, dry it up, and whatever happens to the community just happens. So over the course of the 4 years, both internally at the Rio Grande Water Conservation District, a long, extensive effort around conservation efforts, different cropping, different less water consumptive use crops, incentives for efficiency, incentives for reduction in groundwater withdrawals. And then at the state capitol, just teaming up with my colleagues, Senator Bridges in a turf buyback program for municipalities. We with Senator Roberts this session about gray water reuse. There's a lot of they seem small and incremental, but they're very important, particularly every chance we can get Front Range municipality interests to focus on a better, more efficient water use of their water. It takes some of the pressure off of our rural community. So always interested in advancing those conversations. There's not like a big, single solution to this problem. Well, it's Mother Nature, but she's not been very cooperative for the last 20 years. This isn't really 20 years of drought. This is truly the aridification of the West. And we're trying to figure out how do I keep, our rural communities relevant and prosperous in these pretty challenging times. So or keep it short so Vivian gets a chance.
Good answer. All right, Vivian.
All right, thank you, Senator Simpson. Again, I tip my hat to Senator Simpson because he does do the water for a living. When I joined this race, Mary Dodd immediately told me, learn about water. Know water. You have to get in there and do water. So I spent the last 6 months doing as much studying and background research as I could to understand the water situation throughout Colorado, throughout the West, and particularly in our little corner of the state. We have a lot of big things coming up over the next couple of years as far as water goes. I know we have the Colorado River Water Compact that's going to go into discussion next year. That's going to be huge. We have to make sure that the outcome of that says that we get to keep our water in the upper basin and stop the lower basin from stealing it. We're also going through, I believe, the cases with the Rio Grande Water Compact and fighting Texas and New Mexico on that to try to make sure that that's equitable and fair. And as Senator Simpson said, we have to make sure that our water is not being taken for unnecessary waste across to the Front Range and the eastern slope there. We have to support our farmers, and we have to support our cities, and we have to support our industry by making sure that our water is protected. I love the programs that I've seen so far. I love the stuff that Colorado State University is doing with water conservation, the ways they're working with farmers. And I think those programs are definitely a key way to start. And we need to make sure we are paying attention to those, following the results, and supporting those programs that are working.
All righty, 90 seconds. All good information. The next question, Marsha Porter Norton wants to know, what are your positions on ballot initiative 50? Is this about property taxes? Okay. I'm not all that versed with all these numbers yet. And the other one, potential, called 108. Both would have serious impacts on county government's budgets as well as special districts. So the Senate Bill 24-233 was passed with bipartisan support, and counties accepted a cap on property tax growth, and yet we are still faced with potential draconian cuts if these measures pass. What are your thoughts? And we'll start with Vivian this time.
Thank you. First of all, I think we need to reframe the discussion around taxes. I mean, my entire life and our entire lives it's been a dirty word. It's something that people say, oh, they're completely evil, but they're not. We use that tax money as a state in ways that are productive and supportive to our communities. We have good roads, we have good water delivery, we have good electric infrastructure, and we need to keep those things and we need to support them. And all of these come from tax dollars. So I think we start by reframing that discussion and educating people that, hey, these tax dollars are not going to waste. They're being used productively. Now, from there, we have to acknowledge that the COVID pandemic screwed up a lot of our tax situation because it jacked up property values, which raised property taxes. And especially for people on fixed incomes, that put things out of their reach or made it very difficult for them. So a lot of these solutions that we may need to find may not be a blanket solution that works for everybody. We may need to find solutions that apply to retired people or people on fixed incomes versus people that have more flexibility in their budget. But primarily, I think, as with everything, we have to make sure that the people that have the $1 million properties and the really expensive properties are paying their fair share of taxes, because that's what's going to support our communities.
All righty. And Senator Simpson, same question.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. The ballot initiative 50 is pretty problematic. And I think when people understand the full impact of that initiative, I think I'm predicting that it will not pass. It limits the growth of or collection of property taxes statewide at, I think, 4.5% or something like that. But if Front Range valuations are growing at 25% and ours here in Senate District 6 are growing at a much smaller pace, we're going to pay a dear price for that in services across all of Southwest Colorado and the San Luis Valley. So I'm not supportive of ballot initiative 50. The other one, I'm not in tune with it yet. And I'll highlight, it's ironic, I'm again down here with Senator Hansen, who crafted the Senate Bill 24-233, and that I did support it. And I have talked about taxes for all day yesterday and again today. And I've always said my hope was that at some point in the future, I'd like to figure out how do we get the General Assembly, the state legislator, out of the property tax discussion, because this is really a local issue that, and even during Proposition HH last year, I was just advocating that solutions for these challenges about escalating valuations really rely, or they lie within the local community and the taxing entity. So I'd like to see us over time figure out, every session I've been there, we've had a property tax bill, and I'm suspecting we probably have another one next session. Thanks, Karen.
All righty. Gwen, you want to do the next one?
Sure. This is directed to Senator Simpson, but you can both answer. Does your campaign include supporting women by allowing choice and family planning for all by voting yes on Initiative 89 to codify abortion into the Colorado Constitution?
Thanks, Gwen. So it's kind of a mixed bag there. Over my career, I've always supported funding for family planning services. It does get a little nuanced, though, when some of those services are for young teenage women without parental involvement and notification, and that's where I push back in some respect in that space. And then the amendment to the Constitution about abortion rights is more problematic for me. I talked at the League of Women Voters about, I wished we could get to a space that wasn't just this binary position of outlawing or eliminating the woman's right to choose for abortion versus unlimited, unfettered access. So I was always hopeful there was more conversation and discussion and focus on the family planning perspective and adoption and alternatives and supporting women and men and families as they consider, adding to their family at the birth of a child or the suspension of a birth of a child. So it's one of those kind of odd, really hard, nuanced conversations that I said at the League of Women Voters. I actually, I believe life starts at conception, but I also recognize I serve in a capacity as a representative of the entire community and trying to find the balance. And that's pretty hard in this space. It's been pretty difficult. A lot of sleepless nights thinking about how to present myself and my findings and my beliefs in this space, particularly around abortion and access to reproductive rights. It's been a challenge for me, without a doubt.
All right. Thank you. Vivian, same question.
All right. I think the key there in Senator Simpson's response was taking away a woman's right, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about, is taking away rights from people. Okay. That's just that to me makes it a non-starter of an issue. It shouldn't be a conversation. It shouldn't be up for discussion. We do not take away rights from people in the country that I grew up in. Okay. This is a right that women have had, justifiably so, for well over 50 years, and it was taken away. Okay. I'm 100% against taking away women's rights. As far as if that happened, what would we do, or how do we take care of those children? I mean, we can look at the states that it did happen in. We can look at the Texas or the Alabama or the Missouri and see what's happened with those women there that have lost that right, and how they are suffering, how they're even dying, because they are no longer have access to this fundamental right that they should have. So my position is very strongly support Initiative 89. I believe it needs to be in the Constitution. I'm with Senator Simpson. I wish we were a state where it didn't have to be. And 2 years ago, we were in that place because we had Roe v. Wade. Okay? We did not ask for it to be overturned. That was the other side. And we need to get it back. We need to protect it for everybody.
Great. Right at the money. Just to be clear, it is codified by legislation in Colorado that there is abortion access, but Initiative 89 puts it in the Constitution, which makes it hard to take back. So more and more states are doing that to ensure that reproductive freedom. So the next question is about climate change. Werner Heiber says, with climate change being a reality, are you in support of an energy conversion to renewable energy, and how do you see it happening? Who's first? Cleve?
Vivian's first this
Vivian.
time.
Okay, Vivian.
All right. Yeah, climate change is real. That's something that legislation cannot change. You cannot just say that it's not real. Again, 20 years in the oil and gas industry, also doing renewables at that time. I did a lot of windmill work for the wind farms that are off the coast of many nations. And one of the things I learned during that time was that everything has a carbon footprint. When they manufacture those giant windmills, they have a carbon footprint. Okay. All of these things do contribute to our environment and the climate change. And we have to use the science and rely on the science and follow it to understand which is benefiting us and which isn't. I believe in a slow transition to renewable energies. I think that's a smart path to go, and it's something that we need to, again, follow the science, follow the experts, and get there step by step. We cannot turn off all the gas wells or the oil wells tomorrow and just go with wind and solar. It's not going to work. It has to be done intelligently.
Mm-hmm. Great. Senator Simpson?
Thanks, Karen. And yeah, appreciate Vivian's response. We align pretty closely in that area. And look, I live that climate change scenario in real time. Like today, my surface water diversions out of the Rio Grande from my farm are on the cusp of curtailment or being eliminated just because snowpacks have diminished over time, and my historic water right just doesn't deliver the same water. So have been really active in this space. And again, getting to ride the last 2 days with Senator Hansen, who is also, very active in this space. I did a bill last year to promote agrovoltaics, where we can take, productive farm ground and overlay solar generation on top of it and have a dual use purpose. And he and I've talked about, how to demonstrate that even on a greater scale, even particularly on my farm. I'm an Excel customer. I write Excel a check for $8,000 or $9,000 a month in the summertime for my electric service. And can I not figure out a system where I'm more self-sufficient and can kind of wean off of Excel? And we do that through renewable energy and battery storage. But again, working with Chris has been a real pleasure, and finding ways to advance renewable energy. And I'm all about trying to figure out geothermal as well. Colorado has a great potential for more geothermal applications. So thank you.
All righty. Gwen, you want to do the next one?
Sure. This is one that was emailed to us, and it's directed at Senator Simpson, but I think that Vivian can also comment on it. As a fourth generation rancher, Senator Simpson, how do you justify voting against the right to repair bill for farming equipment, which would have provided farmers with more autonomy and potentially reduced costs for maintaining their machinery?
So yeah, there was this kind of an interesting conversation. And for me, it was as much about safety of farmers and ranchers. When you open up the Pandora's box, I got up on the floor and talked about equipment that I have that has GPS guided steering systems and high pressure hydraulic hoses. And look, for me, I've had great relationships with my dealers, and they've always provided a level of service that I needed. And I know parts of Colorado were not experiencing the same kind of support from their dealers, which what drove this conversation. But ultimately for me, it was, I just didn't want to open the Pandora's box of farmers. And I know in statute it says you can't, but their ability to modify or change emission standards, or potentially bypass some safety feature for convenience, for finishing the work for the day or for the week or maybe even for the season. And that's where, that's why I ended up being opposed to the right to repair bill.
Okay, Vivian?
Okay, this is actually an incredibly important bill for me. Again, as when I was a farmer and I had my tractor, it was just a little tractor, but I was subject to the same rules. And one of the things I found with, and this is my anecdote, is that I have a little Mahindra tractor with a Mitsubishi engine. Now I can get the glow plugs for that Mitsubishi engine from Mitsubishi for $30 a piece, or I could go through the dealer and it would cost me $300 a piece. I also needed to either find a way to get my tractor to the dealership or pay the service call to have the dealer come out to me. So it became a difference between a $90 repair that I could do myself and a greater than $1,000 repair. And again, farming is so, the margins are so tight and it's so hard to survive. I would not be able to do it if I was doing that myself. And while I appreciate Senator Simpson's concern about the farmer's safety, I think as with everything else in life, we have to let the farmer make those decisions with respect to his skill level and his capability of repairing his equipment. Okay? I have over 20 years as a maintenance superintendent. Okay? I've worked on hydraulics, pneumatics, electrical systems, every kind of, there's nothing on that tractor that I don't have 20 years experience fixing. So there was no reason for me not to get in there. And when I went in at the community college level and I taught people, young farmers, how to repair their own equipment, that was the reason, was to save them that money. Okay. And we offered classes to make sure that they could handle the basic repairs that they needed to get. We even taught welding so that occasionally you can teach, you can weld a repair if you need to. But again, it comes down to trusting the farmer to make those decisions about what part of their equipment they can work on and what part they can't, and leaving it to them to do that. But they should have that ability to save that money where necessary, and they shouldn't be hog-tied.
All right, great. The next question also via email is universal health care for Colorado. We saw it on the ballot many years ago, and people are working to get it back on. Not this year. So encompassing questions such as mental health, rural health care, and cost of living, is the possibility of a single-payer universal healthcare system in Colorado. The Colorado School of Public Health Studies will show that such a plan can cover all residents at a much reduced cost than we pay now. Will you support this when it gets on the ballot in 2026? And that would be Senator Simpson first.
No, it's Vivian's first. She just
Okay.
finished answering the last
I've lost
question, so she's
the
first.
two from thing. Gwen, can
Sorry.
you?
A little confusing. That's all right. Hey, I'll tackle this one. Absolutely, I support it. I have experienced the universal healthcare systems in Norway, in the UK, and down even in Brazil. And everywhere I went, the care was fantastic or above what I get in the United States. So I've had a really good experience with it. I think it can be done right, and I think it can be done efficiently. And I think it's a really good place to start at looking at rural healthcare and making sure that the people out here get the services they need, because we don't have the luxury of being on the front range where they have competition and they have prices being controlled by that element of the economic engine, and we're limited. So something like a universal healthcare, I think it's worth putting the money into to explore and to study to see if it's possible. So I would definitely support that.
Great. Senator Simpson?
So it would be an interesting, I could probably support the study. Gwen and I have had conversations for 2 years now as the attempt to charge the public, who's charged somebody to do the study. And the bill has never gone through. I've never had a chance to vote on it in the Senate. It just never makes it that far. And I'm not sure, again, what the barriers are or the pushback from, the majority party can have that thing heard on the floor, but for 2 years in a row now, we have not. And I've been honest and open that like Vivian, I've experienced some of a single payer system in remote parts of Australia where it didn't work really well, but it's just anecdotal. And I just try to describe, here's what my life experience was, here's where I would start. But I always approach this with an open mind, and whether I'd support a ballot initiative would really depend on what the language in the ballot initiative said. So it's a little premature to say yes or no, but I've always been open to better understanding, and Gwen's been a great resource to help provide me with some other background outside of my kind of anecdotal experiences. So that's kind of how I try to approach all the legislation and the policy that gets in front of us over the course of the last 4 years.
All righty. Next question is, could you explain how you would or did vote on the assault weapons ban? And that would be Cleve, am I right?
Yeah, I start, but I never, again, in 2 years, the bill has been there to ban assault weapons, and I've never been in a position to vote yay or nay on it. But I would tell you, I would vote no against it. I'm a firm believer in Second Amendment rights, and if we're going to do this, it really probably should be undertaken on a national level instead of state by state.
All righty. Vivian?
Okay. Out here in rural Colorado, it makes such a difference when you're considering weapons and firearms and the way we use them out here. Obviously, there's hunting is an enormous industry that we have, that people come from all over the country and support us economically by doing those things. So guns are important. Many of us, especially out here in rural Colorado, we all own our own guns. I think it depends on the wording of the bill itself and what it is actually focused at and what it's addressing. I don't think a blanket ban on any particular type of weapon is going to work, but depending on how it's worded and what we're looking at, I don't feel there's anybody that has a need for an incredibly deadly weapon. At the same time, I'm not going to take that right away because I don't believe in taking rights away. But I think we need to monitor who's buying those weapons. We need to monitor and track where those weapons are. And we need to be doing background checks. We have to have a test to drive a car. So I don't know why we don't have the same kind of levels. Whoop. The the same kind of gates to get through, the hurdles to jump, to make sure that you are responsible and capable of having that weapon before we just let you have it. I don't think it should be open to anybody. I think we need to manage it like we do so many other things.
Alrighty. And Gwen, you want to do the next one?
Okay, I think we're getting near the end. This may be the last question.
Yeah, it looks like the last one.
From Dick White. Every tax discussion in Colorado is colored by Tabor and its multiple provisions that create a high bar for every initiative. A few communities, such as Aspen and Telluride, have used real estate transfer taxes to support affordable housing since before Tabor. Understanding that Tabor has many provisions, but we can only address a single constitutional provision at once, would you support deletion from Tabor or modification from prohibition to a maximum rate of the provision that prevents communities from imposing real estate transfer taxes? I realize that's a long question, but I think the last there prevents communities from imposing real estate transfer taxes.
Vivian?
And that's a me question. Yeah, Tabor's a mess. I think we all realize that. There's been efforts to get rid of it completely. I'm not fully versed in all of the ins and out of that, so I'm not going to go overboard with one way or the other. As with everything else, it needs to be studied. It needs to be looked at. I don't agree with the Tabor system as it's being implemented now. Again, when our schools are suffering without enough money and our communities are suffering without enough money, as much as I appreciate the effort to return money to taxpayers, I don't think it's serving us as a state or as a district or as communities. We need that money to support these things that support us. So I would like to see it go away. I would like to see that money put back into our communities to make them stronger, to provide the services we need and to protect our children.
And I think Tabor is doing exactly what the voters asked for it to do, limit the growth of government. And there's a provision if local taxing entities want to go to the voters or the state wants to go to the voters and ask for an increase for a specific purpose, the mechanisms are there, and I continue to support that and encourage entities to do that. A number of local entities debruced years ago to allow collection of revenue above and beyond Tabor limits, and that the mechanisms are there. I think it's hard, and I think it probably should be hard for Coloradans to experience even more burdensome taxes than they already do. So I support Tabor, recognize there are avenues to work through it and around it with voter support.
Alrighty. Well, thank you both for an excellent back and forth on all these questions. And I see Ruben's here from the Herald, so we'll be reading a great article pretty soon. And we're gonna everybody say thank you to our two candidates, Vivian and Cleve. We'll move on to the House District 59 candidates, and we are exactly at halfway through the program, so this is working great. Again, put your questions in the chat, and these questions will now be for House District candidates. So I'm going to introduce them, and then we'll flip a coin to see who goes first. So Democrat Katie Stewart is a fourth-generation Durangoan, has deep roots in the Southwest Colorado, and possesses an understanding of the unique needs and challenges facing our rural areas. She's been on the 9R school board since 2021. An empathetic listener, Katie has developed a collaborative and situational leadership approach with her work in La Plata County and across Colorado. Our next candidate, Republican candidate Clark Craig, has been mayor of Ignacio since 2022. Hope I got that right. He's a graduate of Durango High School and has a BS in mathematics from Northeastern State in Oklahoma. Clark has held various leadership positions in oil and gas information technology and production automation for 25 years. So let's get the coin flip out. And Clark, I'll give you heads. All right. And
Sounds good.
Hit flip it. Tails.
Statistically, it should be tails.
All right, Katie, you're first with your opening statement.
Yes, thank you to the club, the La Plata County Democrats, and it's very nice to see Clark on here today. As Karen said, my name is Katie Stewart. I am a fourth generation Durangoan. Right now I'm sitting in my family home that's been in my family since 1906. There have been a few updates here and there. I am a wife and a mother. We're a blended family. I have 5 children, and I know that's a lot. Some of them are home right now, so if you hear that, that's a little bit of background noise, ambiance. Currently in my second term on the Durango 9R School Board, I have a true heart for public education. I believe that it is, the answer to a majority of the issues that we face. If we educate our children in a thoughtful and innovative fashion, we can create problem solvers. Mental health care and access to rural health care in Colorado is certainly a big concern. Making sure that we have enjoy the same equities as our friends on the Front Range is extremely important. Sustainability in agriculture, also very important. A lot of what happens in HD 59 is water and agriculture related. And having those conversations and making sure that we're bringing our farmers and ranchers to the table to have those discussions. I've been in politics for a little while, and I really felt like this was the next best step to be able to serve Southwest Colorado in the way I wanted to. It really has been my pleasure to do the work in the Durango School Board and to go to the state and continue advocating for rural Colorado and its needs would be a great honor. So thank you all for attending today, and I look forward to this conversation with Clark.
All righty, Mr. Craig.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to do this. We did send that invitation out to some folks on we'll call it this way, call it the other side. So we thought this was a great opportunity just to get our messages out there. And so a big thank you to both of you for hosting this and everything. As she said, my name is Clark Craig. I am currently sitting as the mayor of Ignacio, and I thoroughly enjoy it. We got a lot of things going on out here, and would love to talk about that offline if I ever get a chance. We did move back here in 2017. I wouldn't say I'm a generational Coloradan because my parents moved me here in 1968. I was 2 years old, didn't have much of a choice, and my wife was actually born here in Durango and grew up in Bayfield. So we have 3 wonderful, wonderful young women as daughters, and they're off the payroll. I like to tell people that. They've all been educated and are community-minded, involved people in different areas of the country. And so that's a blessing for us. I was 25 years in oil and gas, as you mentioned, in IT, automation, and so forth. Spent a significant time in Farmington, New Mexico area, took us over to Texas, Oklahoma. We actually spent 5 years in Calgary, Alberta. Probably some of the most fun times we had in our life as a family. That's been a wonderful pleasure and good information for our backdrop, if you will, for information that we make our decisions based on. When we came back to Colorado, we bought a mobile home park. So if anybody hates mobile home park owners and landlords, that's going to be me. And but we did this because it's a family adventure, it's a family business, and we wanted to protect that for Southwest Colorado. And so we are in the affordable housing business and just absolutely love it. We are the first owners of this mobile home park to actually live in the park. So I'm coming to you live from Ignacio, Colorado, sitting at the office we call home here. And so our neighbors are some of the best neighbors in La Plata County. I would love to introduce them to anybody at any point in time. Okay, so politics. We were not into politics most of our life. I got into the Planning Commission in Ignacio back in 2018. That led me into this mayor position. I also serve on the La Plata County Planning Commission. And so I see Marcia's picture down there. We both serve on the Regional Housing Authority on that board, and we've been doing a lot of work with housing. I do sit on other boards. We can talk about those as well, but we're very much involved in our community. We're very much involved with the people in our community. So I think that's kind of all I wanted to say for an intro. Thanks, Karen.
All righty. We'll start with the questions, and to reiterate, you each have 90 seconds to answer each question. I want to back up to just before we started this half. Steve Crest asks your position on ranked choice voting, and he might have meant that for the senator candidates, but I think we should hear it from you guys. So Clark, why don't you go first this time?
Sure. Ranked choice voting, I think that there is some good implementations and some not so good implementations. And so that's one of the challenges as we talk about this and try to understand where we're trying to go with that. I don't know that the current implementation is best for everyone. And so I still have some doubts on that. I did have some conversations last week with a gentleman, and he did enlighten me. So I have some more thinking to do on that, and I'll just be honest about that. Really do. You know, I've never had to play partisan politics because as mayor, we don't declare our party. And so we represent everybody. And technically, that's a form of ranked choice voting. You have 5 people run for 1 seat. Most popular gets it. So it's a form of that. So we do that every day. I just like to see more details about it before we really sit down and say, what is the true impact? What's the outcome going to be down the road? I know there's been some places that adopted ranked choice. I think they're going back to traditional. And then other people are looking at how they can modify that. So short answer, I think there's more information and conversations to have there.
All righty, that's fair enough. Katie?
Yes, thank you for the question. Similarly to Clark, I think we need to understand the impacts, the long-term impacts that ranked choice voting would have on our state. But most importantly, we need to make sure that we have as many voices at the table, and we're not disenfranchising folks. So I understand the intention behind ranked choice voting, just making sure that we're implementing these thoughtfully. And I would truly need to take more time to understand what that implementation would look like and the long-term impacts that it would have on Colorado.
All right, thank you. Just for the record, our county clerk, Tiffany Lee, spoke at the League of Women Voters meeting, I don't know, last month sometime, and she talked about ranked choice voting. So if either of you want to get a good feel for how she feels about it, and she's in touch with a lot of people in the state, it'd be good to just sit down with her. She's not ready. I mean, she's definitely said that we're not ready for it. So that's where we are. Gwen, you want to do the next question?
Sure. We have,
Next 2 questions together, right?
yeah, exactly. So these are both about women's rights, family planning, and Initiative 89, which again, just to remind everybody, would enshrine abortion access in the Colorado Constitution. So the question is, what is your support level for women's rights, family planning, and Initiative 89 on the November ballot?
And it's Clerk.
You sure? I think it's Katie.
Oh, Katie. Oh, we're doing opposite. Okay. Jesus.
We're doing opposite. It's opposite day. No. So unfortunately, with Roe v. Wade being overturned almost 2 years ago today, a little over 2 years ago, it really put the conversation back in the state's hands. And it's important that we enshrine and codify those rights in Colorado for women and those who can get pregnant. I very much support Initiative 89 because everyone deserves access to reproductive health care in all corners of Colorado, whether that means tubal ligations, birth control, or a DNC, a dilation and curettage, or an abortion. So I most certainly support Initiative 89.
All righty. Clark?
Well, I think we heard from Cleve and Vivian. This is a very challenging question. I think just to start and lay the groundwork, this is definitely a very personal choice. And for Sharon and I, we choose life. We are very much pro-life. We believe that inception is where everything starts. With that said, I feel like we tend to get too far into this very one topic item which is abortion, when we really need to say, what if we spent this much energy talking about abortion, talking about family planning and reproduction? Because to me, that's where the true value is trying to understand how we can make a positive impact across the board. To that said, I don't support 89. I don't support codifying. It's currently legal in Colorado, and it's done that way by the voters. And so I think we're sitting in a position where the voters voted and they said what they wanted to say. Of course, that's coming up in November. We'll find out where everybody's at that point in time. So I kind of go back to something that was said at the League of Women Voters a month and a half ago, and I believe it was Cleve and Barbara were sitting there giving an update. And I think Barbara said it best. Nobody wants abortion. And I think if people can start with that conversation and say, how can we look at all of the other options and take abortion as the very last step? So, okay, I got the sign. Thank you.
Alrighty, our next question is from Marcia Porter Norton. We are in a time when the legislature is doing a lot of great work around renewable energy transition, DEI, which is diversity, equality, and inclusion, affordable housing, etc. These are all things I support, but putting on my commissioner hat, we are getting to a point where many mandates coming down from the state, as well as tax policies, which is up in the chat with the question before this on the chat, are having a tremendous impact on local governments, our budgets, our ability to provide mandated services. How do you see the interplay between the state and its goals and local governments, and what outreach will you do with local governments before voting on something that impacts us? And that would be Katie. No.
Is it Clark?
I think it's me. It's okay. We can keep track if you want. That's not a problem. But thank you for that question. And that is a great question. So there's a lot to unpack there. And I believe there has been a lot of progress. I think we talk about the environment, we talk about climate, we talk about renewable energies. I came out of the oil and gas sector. I came from a very environmentally friendly organization that protecting property rights and environment was priority number one. So, I look at the transition and I thought that Vivian's answer was probably the best I've heard in a while, which was, it's not going to happen overnight and we need to continue working on that. But the bigger question I heard from Marcia was unfunded mandates. As a municipal leader, working with the RHA, understanding some of the challenges coming down the pike and understanding what our commissioners have having to deal with, the unfunded mandates have become a real big issue. I think some of the other policies that have come in over the last 10, 15 years through our legislature has created environments with additional fees. I know we don't want to call them taxes, but when they're levied by the government, I'm going to call it a tax. But right now they're called fees. They're hurting our businesses, different individuals. A lot to be done there. And I think that there's a general consensus at the legislator level to not have unfunded mandates in the future. Figure out how to fund these things before they come out. So I hope that answered your question, Marcia. Katie?
Yes, similarly, sitting on the school board, we have been subject to unfunded mandates, and I think it's very important to have conversations with those that are governing at a local level. So going back to that collaborative approach, because this is an ongoing conversation, county commissioners, those in Ignacio, Bayfield, Archuleta County, you all are experts in your communities and know what's needed and have innovative solutions as to how we move forward. So truly, I see collaboration as the best way to move forward and having these conversations. So Commissioner Porter Norton, you would definitely be one of my phone calls as we encounter these issues to make sure we have this open dialogue and robust conversation around the impacts that it could have on Southwest Colorado. And at times when necessary, push back on these unfunded mandates because of the impact they have on our local communities.
Excellent. Gwen?
Okay, the next question says, what is your stance on parental rights? Do you support a parent's right to school choice? And what is your position on schools not notifying parents of issues such as behavioral issues?
Hmm. Well,
And I suppose that's me first. Durango has, and this is just anecdotal because of I sit on school board just in Durango. Durango has a really great relationship with the charter schools. We have one school chartered under us, 2 through CSI. We have a great partnership, and I am a strong proponent of folks making that decision of what school best fits their child's educational style. Because at the end of the day, it's about the student and what's best for them. As far as being notified over behavioral issues, I again can only speak to my experience as a parent in Durango and as a school board member in Durango, but I feel like we have very close communication with our parents and families regarding behavioral issues, and again, a collaborative approach of those wraparound supports to make sure we can support our students as they maneuver through whether it's mental health issues, academic issues, and meeting those students where they're at. So parents are always part of that conversation and should be.
Clark?
so I think that we're going to both be very much aligned on this question. We definitely support school choice. We chose public school in all the different areas that we lived, even in Canada, for our children. And we felt that that was the best option, but I understand that parents would like to have a different choice. So definitely supportive of school choice, especially within each community. Each community needs to be able to make that decision for themselves. As far as parental rights, absolutely. Every parent has the right, and that is making decisions on base of their children. There could be some very fringe examples that we could all talk about. Well, what if and what if? Those are one-off, but I think by and large, parents need to be making those decisions for children. And unfortunately, it gets elevated because we hear stories happening in other school districts, and I don't like that, and I want to make sure that what we have control over, which we're part of the Ignacio Public Schools. I think they're doing a fabulous job, and I'm really happy with what they do in their policies and how they invite parents into the classroom and just everything that they're doing. I hope that other schools are following that same model.
Alrighty. Next question is, what future role does the state need to play in improving forest management?
Well, that's
As
a
we
great question. One of the first conversations I had was regarding forest management in our state with a gentleman over in Archuleta County. And I think if we go back 10, several, maybe 15 years, there was a move to not manage our forest and try to maintain this level of untouched wild environment. Well, I think we all understand, I hope we all understand that there needs to be a level of management. However, there is a law in the books that requires anybody that drives a logging truck, they have to have 2 years experience before they can drive in Colorado. And the only way to get that 2 years experience is to move to like California and work in California for 2 years before you can come back. There's not even a mechanism to be able to train drivers with highly qualified drivers here in Colorado. I think that's something that needs to be looked at and understood. I can see it if we're trying to limit logging, and maybe that was the reasoning behind that several years ago. There's a lot of work to be done. I would also mention the term Timber Age. It's a company that's going to be moving into the Mancos area. They're going to be using local products to be able to build housing products, and that model can be uplifted and placed throughout the Western and the Front Range where they have access to adequate timber that needs to be harvested. So please keep an eye on that company, Timber Age. I think it's going to be an exciting thing to watch in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Katie?
Yeah, again, I'll go back to collaboration between, locally, statewide, and nationally. we're in a changing climate, and the impacts of that, whether it's through beetles. My husband was an arborist and owned a fire mitigation business in Archuleta County, so acutely aware of the changing climate impacting forestry in our corner of the state. So ongoing conversations with the people that do have the expertise to talk about what makes sense as far as management moving forward. As Clark pointed out, sometimes decisions are made that aren't always reasonable and work for us locally. Of how do we manage our open spaces and forestry? So again, truly just collaboration and conversations with experts in the field, and learning would be my approach.
Alrighty. Gwen?
Okay, then the next question is another one about education. What is your vision for the future of education in our district? And how do you plan to address the challenges that face our education system? Colorado is low down on many nationwide charts regarding teacher pay and school funding.
That must be back to me, right? The ping pong is getting confusing.
I think so.
Truly, again, Hartford Public Education, fully and adequately funded public education. We just did a formula rehash, but we have a lot more work to do to make sure that each pupil in our state has adequate funding for their educational needs. So my hope is to continue that work of really, working on that formula. We just did something, so making sure that understanding the impacts of that, but also working towards innovative solutions of educational funding to make sure that all of our educators, not just teachers, but custodians, food service workers, everyone that's in that building is an educator, and they deserve to be paid a fair and living wage to be able to live in our communities, thrive in our communities, and do the important work with our students. And it's not an easy problem to solve, but it's one that I'm anxious to tackle.
Alrighty. Craig?
Well, let's first start with a big thank you once again to Barbara McLaughlin. I think we all understand the milestone that she was able to achieve with getting rid of the budget stabilization factor. I think we all know it by a different name. And so I just want to make sure that we all understand the work that she did on that, as well as other legislators. So that's great, great first step. I think that number is still far removed from our current needs today. And I think there's still a lot of work to be done there. So state of our education, there's been some pretty creative ways to handle some of our education things. And I know we're talking about pay and everything else. In Ignacio, housing is a huge issue. My wife and I understood several years ago that if we can't get teachers to move to Ignacio, we can't educate our kids. We have a little bit of control over that. Not everybody else does. We're able to keep a unit available in the summertime just in case we have a teacher coming in the fall. And so we try to plan ahead so that we have kind of stopped that housing problem for our teachers. That's a pretty big deal. I think other communities can do that. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Southwest Education Collaborative. What an amazing example of how we can take other funds and really augment the education possibilities for our kids and standardize it across multiple school districts. I don't want to take my whole time talking about that, but Southwest Education Collaborative, and Katie's aware of it, being on the 9R school board, originally started with Ignacio, Bayfield, and Durango, a little bit of Pagosa, and now encompasses school districts all the way over to Dove Creek. And so urge everybody to understand more about that, because I think that's a wonderful example. And I got the sign.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing up that. I'll put something in the chat, because the next question is, Dave Peters asked, do you support rural counties voting by district versus at large in county elections?
Yes.
Okay. Katie?
Well, I would say that the county commissioners, even if, for instance, Commissioner Porter Norton, she represents District 2, which is the majority of Durango, but she's also speaking and voting for everyone in the county. So I would say it's important for everyone to have a voice in La Plata County as to who represents them.
Good. Let's see. The next, Gwen, next one from email.
I'd like to ask a healthcare question. That's one of my big issues. And so the question really is, do you believe that everyone should be able to get the healthcare that they need, regardless of how much money they have? And if so, how do you see us proceeding toward that goal?
Is that me now? um, absolutely, Gwen. We should all have equitable access to healthcare regardless of our financial means. And I think funding a study as to the impact of universal healthcare is an excellent first step.
Okay.
I think echo the same thing. Absolutely, everybody should have access to affordable healthcare. It is a challenge in our state right now. And Gwen and I have actually talked about this. I don't know if you remember Cattlemen's and some other meetings where we talked about our Canadian experience. Ours was not as positive as Gwen's. And so I do think that there's good solutions out there. And I think in the free market, we need to be able to look at, I mean, without going into grave detail, my wife and I do not have insurance. And so we subscribe to a private system. For a monthly fee, we have access to a doctor. And I think that's an incredible model. It's far cheaper than anything else we can afford. And it works for us, and it's in great service. Now, do we have catastrophic care? We do not. In the event of emergency, I know that our hospitals will take care of us, but there's some challenges out there, and I think we need to work through that. I liked where Cleve said, all of the stuff that has come up in the Senate has never made it out of the Senate. We Republicans don't have the majority in there, so we need to have more dialogue and be able to have more conversations in there, how we are solving these problems, not only for Front Range, but specifically for rural Colorado.
Alrighty, the next question is about Indigenous rights. Our district is home to the only 2 reservations in Colorado, the Ute Mountain Utes and the Southern Utes. What steps will you take to support and uphold the rights of these communities, and how will you address their specific concerns and promote their well-being?
So we live it. As mayor of Ignacio, we're the only community allowed to exist within the boundaries of the Southern Ute tribe. You probably read some articles in the paper lately. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But, we try to meet every 6 months, if we can do it more frequently, with tribal council. We're all very interested in our community working together. And so I think there's more work to be done. Lorelei Cloud is now sitting on the water board for the state. I think that's a great move. And so we all have very similar interests, and we need to continue that. I have a great relationship with Chairman Baker, and I plan to continue that relationship into the future, as well as the chairman for the Southern Ute or the Mountain Ute tribe. We've had a few conversations and definitely want to continue fostering that. We also need to recognize within the Southern Ute Reservation, it's checkerboard. So you have private property ownership as well as tribal ownership. And so we need to understand there are private property rights existing within that reservation as well. So I'll hand it over to Katie.
First and foremost, recognizing that these 2 federally recognized tribal nations here in HD 59 are sovereign nations, and making sure that, to keep that sovereignty and respect that. Again, going back to collaboration, having conversations with the tribes and tribal members, constantly, and keeping those lines of communication open to make sure that their needs are being met, their interests are being represented at the state level. And I'll leave it at that.
All righty. Gwen, you want to do our next question?
Okay, this is a gun safety question. Gun safety is a critical issue for many residents in our district and across Colorado. What specific measures do you support to enhance gun safety while respecting the rights of responsible gun owners? How do you plan to address the diverse perspectives on this issue within our community?
Well, listening is always a great first step. As was discussed during Vivian and Cleve's portion of this forum, guns are tools here in rural Colorado, and it's important to acknowledge that and the ranchers and farmers' relationships with these tools. I do support common sense legislation such as red flag laws, and truly, again, continuing this conversation because there are a lot of diverse perspectives. But I think if we truly sat down and talked to each other, we would recognize that our values in general aren't too, differing from each other. We want safe schools and public places. We want folks to be able to access these tools that are important to their way of life, to recreation, and have and compromise and have innovative solutions around the safety of our state.
So the question around gun safety, definitely a proponent for gun safety. Maybe I grew up in a different era because I don't even think I could drive when I took my gun safety course. So we were teaching gun safety at a pretty young age back in the 70s and 80s. And I don't know what happened to that. We need to go back to that. But we can't talk about gun safety without talking about consequences. And if you don't respect other people's lives or their property, and you choose to steal and to use those guns in a manner that they're not intended, then I think there needs to be consequences. And what we saw with the legislature this last year, all of the gun laws went after law-abiding citizens. When there was debate and they tried to include some level of consequence for people who chose to live outside the law, that was shut down. That was not allowed. The only gun bill that actually was going to increase jail time possibly for people who steal guns got killed in committee right off the bat. So we end up with one that says, as a legal gun owner, I have to put my gun in a lockbox in my vehicle. And if it gets stolen, that's my problem. Whoever steals it doesn't have a consequence. If they steal it and it's not in a lockbox, I am held at a higher level of consequence than the person who steals it. We need to figure out how to flip that. And there should be consequences for crime. And so that's where I'm at on that. But as far as gun safety goes, I think every kid should learn how to handle a gun safely. So.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm going to put some announcements in the chat that I have. And if anyone else has any announcements, I suggest you put them in there before we end. So any other questions?
Can I make a couple plugs?
Sure.
So we talked briefly about it, and there's been some questions about housing. And I think Marcia would probably echo this. Both of us sit on the Regional Housing Alliance. We don't have a tremendous amount of community involvement for those meetings. And I would urge anybody on this conference call, if you're interested in what we're doing in our community, and I say that Ignacio, Bayfield, Durango, La Plata County, to attend one of those meetings. I think it would be enlightening to see where we've come over the last 2 years, what we're doing. We've had other communities throughout Colorado ask us how we did what we're doing with a private-public partnership. And I think that's very important for anybody interested in housing locally to understand that. So just a plug, I've been watching Marcia's face while we've been talking here. Now she's smiling, so I've done something right. I'm okay. So.
Well, Katie, let me ask you, we didn't even talk about housing, and I'm surprised. I live in the Animas View Mobile Home Park Co-op. I don't know if you've heard of it, but so I'm very interested in housing, and I think too much is going on these days, and I just didn't even think of a question, but thank you for bringing it up.
Sure.
Katie, you have thoughts?
I just want to thank everybody for attending today. I know that maybe not everyone wants to spend an hour and a half during their lunch hour to talk about politics, but it's really important to stay informed and know what your options are. So I appreciate everyone's engagement in this discourse. And Clark, as Senator Simpson said, you know, we both stepped up to run. So I appreciate the conversation. We're both brave, right?
Mhm.
Well, I know my wife is. I'll put it that way. So
I want to thank you both for participating and all four of you candidates on the call. I think maybe Senator Simpson had to leave because he did say he had a meeting. It's been an incredible forum, and we got a lot of questions in. And of course, we didn't cover everything, but there'll be other opportunities, I hope, before the election. There's a lot of stuff in the chat. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in the chat, so we're saving the chat and we're recording this, and it'll be on our YouTube channel tomorrow or the next day. So thank you all for
so
coming.
Karen, do you want to talk a little bit about housing, or do you want to?
I would stay. Let's see who stays.
I think it's one of our biggest issues in District 59, if not the state. So I'll just jump out there if you guys want to. There's 2.5 years ago, the RHA was pretty much mothballed. And a group of we've got, if you didn't know what the RHA was, it's 4 electeds and 4 appointees and an open seat. Pat Vaughn, who was with the Southern Ute Tribe in their development area, is the open seat and currently sitting as the chair or president of the RHA. It's been a tremendous amount of collaboration. We talk about what we've been able to accomplish, just getting these municipalities together. Each one of us have public funds. We partnered with the Economic Alliance. If you're not familiar with what that is, the Plata Economic Alliance meets the second Tuesday of every month up at the Innovation Center. Wonderful way to figure out what's going on there as well. I sit on that board. And we partnered with them to create a housing manager underneath there that could really do things that we couldn't do from a municipality perspective. With that came a catalyst fund where we can actually help fund the beginning of projects that dollars like in that whole grant world doesn't foster. And we actually now have almost $1 million where we created a revolving loan fund where these projects that need some short-term financing can have low interest rates to be able to fund some of these projects. Each municipality has been able to take advantage of this, and you're seeing that come to fruition today, both in Bayfield, Ignacio, and especially in Durango. So that's framing up kind of what we're doing. Does anybody have any questions about that? Gwen, do you have your hand raised? I think I see your hand. So.
No, I mean, it's obviously a very complex sort of question that, you know, there's no simple answers to. So I think that all of us need to work on these things together and and try to come up with the best solutions that we can.
Well, and if you don't mind, this was a great forum. I want to always talk about this. I'm very passionate about this. And I know we're kind of moving beyond our forum. This is a great avenue just to educate people on what we're doing. And, you know, Marcia may want to weigh in here. She's not prepared to speak about it, but she's just as passionate as I am about this. So
she does have her hand up.
Oh, good.
I feel like I'm participating a lot in this and I'm not in these elections. So thank you for answering my questions. Yeah, housing is the issue of our time. I mean, I was talking the other day in his speech about my granddad was in the legislature in the 50s and the issues of that time was getting water to people and getting electricity to people. And now it's housing. I would like to echo the Regional Housing Alliance and how hard we are working. There are 356 units below market that are currently in the pipeline. And those are being done by a private developer, private-public partnership in Bayfield, and with what Ignacio is doing and Bayfield and Durango. And so really shout out to the municipalities and the private people willing to step up. We need about 700 units a year. So you can see there's a gap there for sure, but at least these 300 and some are in the pipeline. One thing I will say is the RHA knows that housing takes money. It's incredibly complex. And they have formed a committee called the STEER Committee. I can never remember what STEER stands for. But it's going to be coming back to the RHA with a set of recommendations for how to get more money for housing. So just be aware of that. I put the website in the chat. If anybody has comments, input, Clark is right, Mayor Craig is right. We don't have enough people coming to the meetings and engaging, but they're all open. So thanks for the interest. We could probably do a whole nother club luncheon on housing, and I, for one, would stand up to do that. So Katie, didn't mean to step in front of you. Sorry about that.
Oh, not at all. I think you're absolutely right, Commissioner Porter Norton, that housing is the issue of our time, and it impacts every facet of, our economy, our school districts, our fire districts, all of it. So continuing this conversation so we have public-private partnerships and innovative solutions is extremely important. Thank you both for your work on the RHA.
I could definitely see another forum on housing. Whether or not we would have more questions than answers is the problem, and it's nationwide. It's awful. I put in the chat that 25% of Fort Lewis College students are housing insufficient. That's an interesting term, and it means they're in their car or they're couch surfing or who knows. So I know when Purple Cliffs was cleared out, there were quite a few students that were living up in Purple Cliffs. And, I just can't wrap my head around that. But that's our reality. Lastly, Ted Compton, I think he's still on. He put a comment in here that the LPA board elections were postponed this year. Look for the campaigns to kick off around late July. Ballots will be mailed in mid-August, results mid-September. So your vote is your voice in the future of energy supply in your community. And there's a lot of stuff going on at LPEA. I'm so happy about all of it. I'm going to give Ted a minute to weigh in here since we've got some people here who really care about this.
Oh, well, I wasn't expecting to get the floor. Thanks, Karen. No, I think, thanks for pointing out that there is a lot going on. And so, I wanted to take the opportunity with, this many people, this many very involved people to just make sure, that people didn't feel like they missed out on their opportunity to have their voice. So historically, the elections would have been completed by now, but they have been postponed. And so you still have that opportunity. It's coming up. Look on the LPA website, keep your eyes peeled to all your local news, and you'll get to keep up with all the exciting things that Karen is mentioning that are happening, and educate yourself, and then be prepared to vote within your district when that time comes. And I'll probably just leave it there. Thanks for the opportunity. Oh, and I am going to run again.
Oh, good. Okay. So the next club lunch is August 6th. And it would be good to have a LPA candidate forum I'll say if you get candidates, because I don't know if you passed the deadline to put your name in yet. Do you know that? Because last year there was no election because everybody just re-upped.
The deadline is not passed, and I'll just dump the candidate packet information into the chat right now. So there is still time to get your petition in and become a candidate in any of the 4 districts. August that would be a good time to have a forum if this group wants to put it together.
Excellent. All right, I'll be in touch with you, Ted, on that.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for everybody. And again, Clark, thanks for bringing up housing. Like I said, there's just too much going on.
Well, this has been great. Thank you for letting us participate. Thank you very much.
And Marcia and Ted, it's great to have our elected officials on the call. And Barbara left earlier, but so great she was here. So thank you, everybody. The call will be recorded and it will be on our YouTube channel tomorrow or the next day.